There's a feeling I get in the forest that I don't get any other place. It's like I'm closer to Earth, or Earth is closer to me. And when I'm in a forest, I walk slower, I listen harder, and it's almost like I can see things grow right before my eyes. I mean, the forest seems so simple and so elemental, and yet we both know that it's complex and it's precarious and it's valuable. And it's not always easy to spot the game changers. In America, we don't always know what makes the difference in how we protected our forests and how we help them grow. But I think we can learn that in history. In the 1950s, America was booming. The GIs were home from the war. Music was rocking around the clock. The post-war boom had muscle. And all across America, homes, stores, superhighways, and skyscrapers were being built. Progress and prosperity were bywords of the new America. Although Smokey Bear spoke up to prevent fires, forests were generally taken for granted. Just another part of the abundance of America. Yet even then, there were people with foresight who understood that our forests were not unlimited. America was in a race to space, and that same spirit of research and scientific endeavor spread throughout our country, not just beyond the surly bonds of Earth. In the prosperity of the 50s and 60s, Americans understood that our abundant natural resources might not last forever. 50 years ago, as President John F. Kennedy said in the early 1960s, we began to realize we needed to expand forestry research too long neglected. In the spirit of bipartisan cooperation, Representative Clifford C. McIntire of Maine and Senator John C. Stennis of Mississippi sponsored a bill to provide federal funding for forestry research at state-supported colleges and universities.
Looking at the historical record, including speeches and remarks made by Senator Stennis and Congressman McIntire, it is very clear that when they drafted Public Law 87-788, the Cooperative Forestry Research Program, their intent was to ensure three things. First, they knew that research was critical to guarantee the long-term sustainability of forests across America, to ensure jobs in timber-based economies, and also to guarantee that wildlife habitat, water quality, and all the many ecosystem functions that forests provide would be strong and viable in the long run. The second major intent was graduate training to make sure that highly trained professionals and scientists would be available to conduct critical forestry and wildlife research. And the third major intent was cooperation. The McIntire-Stennis program is the Cooperative Forestry Research Program, ensuring that state universities and colleges would work effectively with researchers in the USDA Forest Service, as well as with other federal and state agencies and other partners in long-term studies. Through research, graduate training, and working together, the law really did create a driving force. And I think that they chose those words very deliberately, a true driving force for sustaining our nation's forest for decades to come.
In 1962, President Kennedy signed the McIntire-Stennis Cooperative Forestry Research Program into law. 50 years ago, the three politicians probably didn't realize the far-reaching effect their cooperation would have, but they did create the driving force of research for sustainable forestry. The McIntire-Stennis program has supported thousands of forestry research projects and helped produce thousands of trained scientists and research professionals.
Since 1964, the McIntire-Stennis monies have contributed to the education of 2,000 doctoral students who went on to get their PhDs and 8,000 Master of Science students. These are the scientists right now that are out there doing this research.
Funding for the program can be up to 1/2 the amount appropriated for forestry research within the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Each state receives funding based on how much non-federal commercial forest land in the state, the annual volume of timber removed from growing stock in the state, and the total each state spends from non-federal sources on forestry research.
Currently, there are 78 certified institutions receiving the McIntire-Stennis funds, including 13 1890 institutions.
In each state, McIntire-Stennis funds go to land-grant colleges, experiment stations, and other state-supported colleges and universities offering graduate training in the sciences basic to forestry and that have a forestry school. That means they have an academic program that leads to at least a master's degree in forestry. Currently, about $30 million is distributed among almost 80 universities in 54 states and territories that receive support from McIntire-Stennis funds. A real strength of the program is that in 2008 it was expanded to make 1890 land-grant institutions eligible for funding. There are now 13 historically black colleges and universities receiving funding for forestry research through this program.
The McIntire-Stennis program is really the foundation program in forestry. It supported me in the start of my career, and interestingly enough, I was recently in a meeting with all the forestry deans in our country, and I asked them, I said, now raise your hand if your career was started by McIntire-Stennis. Basically, if your doctoral work was supported in one way or another by McIntire-Stennis, or that first stint you had as an assistant professor before you really have kind of the knowledge to go out and get grants and contracts to support your career growth. Was that supported by McIntire-Stennis? And almost every hand in the room went up.
I'm Virginia Burkett, Chief Scientist for Climate and Land Use Change with the U.S. Geological Survey, and a product of the McIntire-Stennis program. If it weren't for McIntire-Stennis, I probably would have never completed my PhD in wetland forestry. I guess in some ways I represent thousands of wildlife and forestry professionals who've completed advanced degrees in forestry because of McIntire-Stennis.
Sustainability means that we consider our economy, our society, and our environment together. If we overlap those interests, we have a diagram of sustainability, but it's weak. A better diagram of sustainability shows that our economy and our society are fully embedded in our environment. This strong vision of sustainability helps ensure that our work is focused on jobs, people, communities, and wildlife. In context, they really can't be separated in the long run. For example, the focus of McIntire-Stennis research includes providing high-quality water for everyone through the protection of watersheds, conserving the habitat of thousands of diverse species of plants and animals, sustaining opportunities for outdoor recreation and the enjoyment of our nation's natural environments, ranging from wilderness areas to urban and suburban forest, controlling invasive plants, insects, and diseases while promoting forest health, and learning new and better ways to sustain one of the world's most abundant renewable resources in urban forests like greenbelts, city parks, and even trees along streets and in residential neighborhoods. High-impact results have been achieved across 54 states and territories where funding is distributed. Here are a few examples of economic and environmental impact with state and regional focus. In Hawaii, research has developed termite prevention and control approaches that have saved over $30 million per year. There's a study in Alaska that is monitoring how forest growth is influenced by climate change and management. It will be used to establish guidelines to assure cooperative management for the next 50 years. Peregrine falcons have also been successfully reestablished in cliff habitats in Kentucky, the first successful nesting pairs since 1939. Glue laminated beams can now be reinforced using lower-grade wood from smaller trees, saving $60 million a year in raw materials in the Pacific Northwest. All across the country, McIntire-Stennis researchers are fully engaged in developing ways to efficiently use woody biomass to generate electricity and to produce transportation fuels and thermal energy. 5 decades of shelter belt research in Nebraska have created proven methods to increase agricultural yields across the Great Plains. These methods are protecting just 2% of the cropland and returning to the farm community millions of dollars from investment in windbreak technology.
McIntire-Stennis projects have always yielded high impact results. An excellent example would be the restoration and regeneration of the bottomland hardwoods in the Mississippi Delta region. Literally hundreds of thousands of acres have been restored using the science that was generated in McIntire-Stennis projects. These hardwood stands are not only economically valuable, but the wildlife habitat, the watershed management, and soil stability that they generate is absolutely priceless. Many of these projects are regionally specific. They address challenges that are extremely important at both the state and regional level.
All across the nation, colleges and universities use McIntire-Stennis funds in different ways. For example, the University of Maine uses the funds for faculty salary support, while at Oregon State University, the funds are used for the Forestry Research Lab. The program provides a steady source of base funding. The law requires that states match the funding, which is part of the driving force the law created.
As we think about that $30 million, I think it's interesting to me that for every $1 of McIntire-Stennis monies, the faculty, the professors, the scientists involved, and the universities are contributing or granting an additional $5 to $10. So those McIntire-Stennis monies are leveraging 5 to 10 times the amount of funds that they are providing.
You know the saying, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail? Well, that's true even for a well-integrated, successful program like McIntire-Stennis. In 2007, the National Association of University Forest Resources Programs prepared a strategic plan called Sustaining Healthy and Productive Forest and Investment in America's Competitive Position in the Global Marketplace. The strategic plan focuses on challenges for our forests today and in the future.
Our forests today face extreme challenges, and we need science to guide our response to those challenges, which include climate change, invasive plants and animals, disease and insects, wildfire, urban sprawl, fragmentation of habitat, and the basic need to maintain productive forest on the landscape.
Given the critical challenges we face today, faculty members supported by the McIntire-Stennis program, I think, fully understand that they're not to just study the flames while Rome burns, but rather they're to work effectively with key partners like state and federal agencies like the USDA Forest Service, with forest industries, forest landowners, and other key constituents all across the nation to develop solutions to the critical challenges of the 21st century. And also, their job is not just to develop solutions, but to deliver them. They don't just publish results and walk away, but they deliver those solutions to millions of people all across the nation through targeted extension and outreach programs.
So we try to serve not just a research and education mission, but help landowners, the millions of forest landowners in the country, manage their land sustainably, responsibly, but also for products that can help feed the economy and produce jobs.
As a society, if we're serious about addressing the economic, environmental, and social issues associated with our forest resources in this century, then it's critical that we take a serious look at the funding in the McIntire-Stennis program. The law authorizes funding of over $150 million, so the current funding level of about $30 million is less than 20% of what's authorized. Given the scope and importance of the issues we face in this century, including invasive plants and insects, diseases, climate change, and wildfire, for example, and all of the interacting threats to sustainability of forest-based ecosystems. That includes jobs and wealth creation, clean water, wildlife habitat, biodiversity, and all of the environmental goods and services that are threatened today. It's our hope that the McIntire-Stennis program will continue to be a driving force. To hit that bold research agenda hard, however, will require continued and enhanced funding for the future.
The only way we can deal effectively with the economic and biological game changers we face is with a bold research agenda based on a strong model of sustainability. The long-term prosperity of our economy and our society is directly based on developing and delivering solutions to forestry and environmental challenges.
We are inventing the future of sustainable forestry, and McIntire-Stennis is key to make it happen.
The 50th anniversary of this program is a time to reflect on significant accomplishments, of course, but it's also a time to look to the future. The work of this program, the driving force, can be magnified with continued and enhanced funding. An opportunity exists today for new bipartisan leadership in securing the science needed for the 21st century threats to our forest and the prosperity related to them. Sometimes we can't see the game changers that make a difference, but we can see the influence of the McIntire-Stennis program that they had on our forest and on our quality of life. It gave us the plan, that gave us the framework to protect and inspire the forestry research programs and to also continually grow our educational programs. So on behalf of our American forests and all they are, happy 50th anniversary to the McIntire-Stennis program. And thanks to the people of Vision for their continuing support of our forest. I like knowing that 50 years from now, someone will be standing in a forest a lot like this one and looking back on the things we're doing, and I expect that they'll think about all our work as the driving force behind this healthy and hardy forest. I sure hope so.